Conversations can be incredibly rich and important for your audience to get the most out of their keynote speaker. And that's what I want to talk about today. My name is Seth Deckman, president and founder of the Keynote Curators, where we've been curating keynote speakers for nearly 20 years for all sorts of organizations, institutions, educational associations in every possible industry. During the pandemic, we did a lot of work with virtual presentations. And what we quickly found out was that moderated conversations was the best way to get the most value out of your speaker's contribution. That has translated, now that meetings are coming back live, that's translated into the on-stage presentation where either a portion or the entirety of the conversation with the speaker's presentation is moderated. This also is the case mostly with speakers that are bigger names, that are either celebrities or more famous. This is less the case with speakers that have best-selling thought leadership books, are professors, perhaps speakers that do it full-time for a living. But I'm talking about those speakers that provide the option of I can make prepared remarks or I can do a moderated conversation. In the case with my clients who entrust me curating their speakers, I think of a couple of things that go into that come into play when we're dealing with the choice about a moderated conversation or not. I look at the cachet, the status, the popularity, the recognizability of the speaker, and what their prepared remarks would be versus what their entire presentation would be as a moderated conversation. Typically, if it's a bigger name, which would also bring along a bigger price tag, I like to lean and tilt towards moderated conversations. One might think, well, they're doing less work. It's not really the case. This is actually the best way to tailor the presentation, in this case, the conversation, for your audience. So here's a common question I get as I'm curating lists and having discovery calls and calls where I really enjoy diving deep into what the theme and the messaging and what would work and what wouldn't work, where we're kind of, putting up a lot of ideas and trimming down what would the list look like. And if you throw out a very big name or a name that I think would work better with a moderated conversation, the immediate question that I get more often than not is, well, what do they talk about? Now, the fact that we're already talking about them speaks to me that my clients have already innately seen some type of fit or some type of way to appeal to their attendees and see value. They might not yet be able to put a name or explain it perfectly, but the fact that they're now asking the question, what do they talk about, is a way of trying to understand how can they frame it. And I answer the question with a question. What do you want them to talk about? Now, of course, they can't just make up stuff and talk about how they ran a manufacturing company if they didn't run a manufacturing company. But what I mean by that is that given that now we've decided to go moderated conversation, we do the moderating and we make the questions. And those questions are guardrails, are a structure for my client to be able to guide, direct, and accompany the conversation and the touch points along the way that they want. I call it the through line. So there might be a little bit of personal interest. There might be a little bit of background. There might be a transition in their career where they went from one thing to another. some very high moments, some very low moments, but all of those can be framed and contextualized inside of the topic or the theme or the messaging or the mood of the conference. So you choose to go for the moderated conversation, and then you begin to structure your conversation that will have a through line that is in harmony, consistent with, aligned with your conference and your theme and what's important to your attendees and what they're grappling with or what you want them to walk away with. Now, how do you get there with the questions? You put a bunch out and then you start trimming them. Most speakers will require to see the questions beforehand. Not so much that it's going to be a stilted or even a kind of prefabbed conversation, but there might be a few that they can contribute to and say, hey, I like this, but actually ask me about this specific story. Because if you want to do what you want to do with this particular question, I have something that's perfect for it. And it's a little bit of a queuing up. And that way you're partnering with the speaker and you're getting the most value out of it. The other thing is there might be things that either they are just not comfortable talking about or they don't necessarily see the relevance, and they might be able to provide another angle or another aspect of what it is that you're trying to accomplish with a specific question. So once the questions get ironed out, then comes the issue or the question, pun intended, of who does the moderating. So I'm going to leave that open-ended question and take a little bit of sip of my tea here. Cheers to everybody. And by the way, if you want to, chime in, ask a question, or offline reach out on a direct message, go to our website, thekeynotecurators.com, and you can go ahead and email us there, reach out via phone, fill out the form, whatever you like. We're here for you to answer any questions and partner with you, do some discovery. So the moderator, this is one where I'm pretty insistent on you bring in a professional moderator, unless there's somebody in-house that has great experience. And by I mean great experience, a lot of experience. The bigger the name, the bigger the celebrity, the bigger the power that the person has, the speech and the conversation can meander and go sideways. It happens. It's part of being human. But how do we, with a finite amount of time, with all the resources that has been invested into bringing this person to your event, how do we maintain that they stay within the structure, within the guardrails, with a little bit of movement here and there? How do you pull it back if it starts going sideways? And that's where a professional moderator comes in. And that's somebody that you really, really need to think about bringing somebody along. You don't have to have somebody as famous, but if you're going to be making an investment in a speaker that makes more sense to have the moderated conversation, then you certainly need a moderator at that same level to be able to get the most out of your purchase. And that is where the questions are also formed with the moderator, so that you can break the conversation into parts, 3 parts, 4 parts, like I said, personal, professional, and then maybe what they're working on right now. Whatever makes sense for the structure of the conversation, and then of course tying it all into the through line of the theme. But I can't emphasize it enough. You have a moderated conversation, the opportunity there, the real richness of that is that you're in control of the conversation. Remember, I often get the question, well, what do they talk about? It could be a very, very famous actor. It could be a politician. It could be somebody. And it's what you want them to talk about. You're driving the train here. You're driving the bus. You're driving the cab. You're the captain of the plane, of the boat. And then within that, they will play within that structure and provide some really rich conversations. And there's spontaneous moments that come up. There's funny stuff. There's very authentic stuff. I've had speakers who knew the questions beforehand and have been very vulnerable and have cried about a very personal, emotional moment. or that have been, I wouldn't say blindsided, but kind of just laughed and chuckled like a big belly laugh because of the levity of the moment that they really weren't expecting. So, or the audience reaction. So I encourage you, when you have somebody where you're not sure about a moderated conversation or not, especially in post COVID when the events are coming back, it's way more personal. It's way richer. Not to say that prepared remarks aren't, but you really get to tailor it and you can curate the conversation in the way that you want. So those are my thoughts on that. I'd love to hear what you all have to say. I appreciate everybody chiming in and listening, and we've had some great comments from people on our LinkedIn lives here. So again, reach out to us. You can find us on our website. Everybody has been entrusting us with this great method, and I would love to bring that to your organization's events. So thank you, and we'll see you next week.